وأرضاه قال فيما أعلم عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كل 100 سنة من يجدد لها دينها. Today's hadith is one of those beautiful hadith, but there's a little bit of a discussion around it. The Prophet ﷺ is saying this, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends someone every 100 years, this is the exact wording of the hadith, every 100 years, to renew this religion, to rejuvenate, to renew it. Now, number one, there's a disagreement with the scholars on the wording of this hadith. Because Abu Hurairah in this hadith says that every 100 years. Some scholars think that the Prophet ﷺ did not say 100 years. He said qarn. And a qarn in Arabic could mean 100 years or could mean a generation. And this is Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu. That's his understanding. So he used, because that happens sometimes. The close companions of the Prophet ﷺ, in certain hadith, would use their own wording sometimes. Not always, by the way. It's not like a categorical, but sometimes in certain things they use their own word. That's how they remember. That's why there's certain variations in certain hadith in the wording. Because sometimes they use their own. This is how they remember. They remember the meaning, they put their own wording. Certain hadith that are like, you can tell this is, it should be narrated ad verbatim. No, they do it ad verbatim, word by word. So the Prophet ﷺ could have said qarn, and qarn means 100 years, a century, or it means a generation. Every now and then, every time things slow down, every time things change, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send someone to actually create that spark. And this also has a pretext for it. Previous nations, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala entrusted them in this message. Previous, the Yahud, the Nasara, the Sabiin, all those nations, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the revelation and said, take care of it, protect it. He entrusted them in this revelation. With us, Muslimin, being the last, humanity cannot afford having this final message entrusted to people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly intervened. What did he say? He said, "Inna nahnu nazzalna adh-dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun." That it is us who actually send down the revelation and we are the protectors of it. And this is one of the ways of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects his message. Every now and then when things slows down, you see one person shows up with knowledge, with the right skill set, and they create this energy, they create this movement, and things move in the right direction. And if you read history, it's always like that. Now, scholars say, by the way, books have been written about this hadith, because scholar X went and studied history and went like, okay, well, every 100 years, this is the mujaddid. This is what they call it, mujaddid, the renewer of the first 100 years, second 100 years, the third, and there's names for each mujaddid. And it's correct. They're correct. These are great people. But I would like to, as usual, I would like to look at these hadith a little bit deeper. And some scholars also, it's not my opinion, some scholars also think that it is not an absolute mujaddid every 100 years. No. It is actually in every field, and more often than that. More often than 100 years. But also, because you can interpret this hadith as every generation, and it's in every field. Of course, we know that the Mujaddid al-Mutlaq, the biggest Mujaddid, Sayyidina Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, he changed humanity basically. But then past that, there are Mujaddideen in science, in knowledge, in Islamic knowledge. Mujaddideen in economy, Mujaddideen in jihad, there's in every field of Islam, there's someone who revolutionized, that's the word, that. And I think even deeper. And I take it even broader. I think every one of us should think about tajdeed, which is, what is it? In my humble opinion, is when you look at a status quo, a status quo you're in, an environment, and there's a lot of good things, but there are things that don't coincide with the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. I think it's everyone's job to say something about it. If you have the knowledge and you know this is wrong, you should say, okay, well, why don't we just change this? Why don't we do tajdeed for this? Why don't we just change it, right? So I think it's also a layers, different levels of mujaddid. There's the top mujaddid, people think Imam Sha'rawi was one of them because of how much impact he had in people's lives and all that. But I feel like there might be some lower level that we don't know about, but they work at a lower level, and they're also mujaddidin. They change things for people. Maybe in one city, you see this one person will revolutionize the mentality of a huge generation, and all of a sudden things change. And this is the privilege that we have. Other nations did not have this privilege. We have it. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, humanity cannot afford having Quran being changed. We cannot. Because this is the last message, and that's it. There's no prophet, there's no scripture past that. It has to be preserved. And it's preserved this way, that every now and then some knowledgeable person with energy, with all that, shows up. And then all of a sudden there's this energy and this change, and people will move in the right direction. And Islam is, if you read the history, is full of it, full of that. It goes low, you get sick, and then you recover with the efforts of few people. So my advice to myself, always think of that, and to you, of course. Always think of that. Always think that, okay, I could be the next mujaddid in my own environment. Change things. Just make it better, make it different. Especially if you have the knowledge and you know this is not correct, okay, well, how about we look at that and change it and try to modify it and make it a little bit better. I hope this was a benefit. يروي الإمام أبو داود في سننه بسند صحيح عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه وأرضاه قال فيما أعلمه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله يبعث في هذه الأمة على رأس كل 100 سنة من يجدد دينها. صدق رسول الله. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك لا إله إلا أنت